in Oakland, California at the Grand Lake Farmers Market. This is my favorite place to begin planning a meal. I like to check out what's in season with local fruits and vegetables and start planning a meal from there based on what my local farmers have. I'm looking at a bunch of different seasonal squash here, including the butternut squash, which we're going to use in our recipe today with our gnocchi and butternut squash cream sauce. Hello lovelies, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Nicole and the seasons are changing. Feeling very autumnal today, and I'm not talking about pumpkin spice anything. I'm referring to butternut squash, chilies, and sage, amongst a few different things. Today we're going to be making pasilla and ancho chili gnocchi with a butternut squash and shallot cream sauce and fried sage on top. Here we have our butternut squash, this cute little one, Yukon Gold potatoes, shallots, ancho and pasilla chili, fresh sage, and Parmesan cheese. The first thing we're going to do is roast this butternut squash, as it's the most time-consuming element of the recipe. Personally, I don't like to chop up butternut squash because it's such a hearty, hard to cut into squash. So I'm just going to have it and then take the seeds out and then roast it. So I'm just going to scoop out the seeds with a spoon of this halved little cute butternut squash. I love parchment paper. Makes for easy cleanup times. We're just going to position these two squashes, toss them with a little olive oil, a little splash of salt, and I'm going to pop those in the oven at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes to an hour. Potatoes are a big thing in my family, but I'm not Italian, so gnocchi isn't something that I grew up with. It was more of a mashed potato thing in my household. I love handmade gnocchi because, to be honest, I've bought a lot of store-bought gnocchi that just, it's not doughy and pillowy enough, and I really like kind of a soup-like sauce, like a really smooth and light sauce, and have the gnocchi like floating pillows in the sauce. Our water has come to a boil. I'm going to place this sieve in here. If you have a steamer basket, that's a great thing too. And pour my potatoes in. And because I have so many in here, you'll want to stir them from time to time and make sure they all have an equal chance to get steamed. So I'm now going to place this lid back on. And the goal is to keep these potatoes from touching the water so that they don't become waterlogged. And I'm going to be steaming them for about 15 to 30 minutes. It varies depending on how many potatoes you're doing. You're welcome to grab some pre-grated Parmesan if you wish, but I prefer to grate it myself because it's fresh and it's more cost-effective. They charge an arm and a leg for that pre-grated Parmesan. We need 1/4 cup. Here we are with our shallots, the lovely place between onion and garlic. We're going to dice these shallots because they're going to be in a cream sauce that will ultimately have the butternut squash that's roasting in it. So you can prevent crying from onions in any way you wish, but I prefer the rag on the cutting board. It really soaks in those onion crying juices. It's getting a bit brisk outside, so I'm going to bring some heat in the kitchen in the form of this pasilla and this ancho chili. So to incorporate these into our gnocchi dough, we're going to slice off the stem and the seeds. When handling chilies, I definitely recommend wearing gloves if you have them, and or just not touching your eyeballs directly after. See, I'm just gonna do a little shake. We'll shake out the seeds. We'll place it in here. Do the same with this ancho chili. Just carve out the top there with the seed. Peel that off, do a little shake. Get the seeds out. There's a lot of seeds in here. Put it in this little dish, and I'm going to pour boiling water over it. And I'm going to let these sit for 10 to 15 minutes until they are tender. So here we are ready to make our gnocchi dough with this food processor. We have our tender steamed potatoes, a cup of all-purpose flour, and you can use gluten-free flour if you wish, 1 egg, half a cup of freshly shredded Parmesan, and 2 rehydrated chilies, Pasilla and ancho. First I'm going to lightly salt and pepper my potatoes. So first I'm going to add my steamed potatoes into the food processor to blend with my egg and half of my freshly shredded Parmesan. And I'm going to pulse this and then scrape down the sides to make sure everything's getting blended. And now I'm just going to let it blend. So now that I have mostly mashed potatoes here, I'm going to add in half of my flour and work in batches. And it's going to stick to the blade pretty quickly, so again, scrape down with your spatula. This could also be done by hand, but not me, not today. All right. So when the dough starts picking up like that, the magic of the food processor, I'm going to add in the rest of my flour and the rest of my Parmesan. So when it starts collecting in this ball like that, that's when you know the food processor has done enough work for you. And I'm going to transfer this onto a lightly floured cutting board. And plop this dough out from my food processor. Whoop. Or if you were ambitious and you actually have been dealing with the dough, kneading it the old-fashioned way, good on ya. So I'm just going to lightly flour this, get it rolled into a ball, and I'm going to fold in my chilies. A little bit more flour, a little bit more flour underneath. Don't want to overwork it. Just getting the chilies mixed in. So the dough is going to have kind of a nice red bits in it. I'm going to dust it with a little bit more flour. And now I'm going to portion it off into 4 sections so that I can easily break this down into the final product, which is gnocchi. Little dumplings, little potato dumplings. So basically how it's going to go, a little bit more flour. I'm rolling this into a long, thin, rope-like piece. Now I'm going to use my fork to cut out the little bits. This is my shape that I'm going for. And then I'm going to mark it with my fork. And just because I like to do this, I like to squeeze it so it's like a little mouth. And there's my finished product gnocchi. So while I'm working, I'm keeping in mind to put the finished gnocchi under this plastic wrap to keep them nice and moist and prevent them from drying out. Because this dough has chilies in it, I'm not going to touch my eyes or really any part of myself until I wash my hands thoroughly after handling this dough because it is hot. So here we have our halved butternut squash that's now fork tender, as you can see, which is perfect for our puree. Just cutting it in cubes, and it's very easily cutting, as you can see, because it's tender and roasted. And sometimes I just like to peel the skin off with my hands because it comes off pretty easily. Here we have the makings for our butternut squash shallot cream sauce. That's going to be for our gnocchi. The ingredients are 3 tablespoons of butter, 4 fresh sage leaves, a 1/4 cup of freshly grated Parmesan, the cubed contents of 1 roasted butternut squash, 1 cup of vegetable broth, a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, and 1/2 cup of finely minced shallots with salt and pepper to taste. Here we are at the stove. Going to add in my 3 tablespoons of butter. And the first thing I'm going to do is fry my sage. The point at which the butter starts foaming is when you want to add in your sage leaves, and that has just started happening. So, I'm just going to gently toss these in. Just very autumnal butter and sage. Once they start sizzling and then the butter starts browning a bit, that's when I know they're ready to be flipped. So I want these to be crispy, this fried sage. When you fry sage in this butter, it effectively infuses that fat with sage flavors. So we're going to have this whole lovely sage-infused butternut squash cream sauce. So my butter is browning. That tells me it's time to go. I'm going to immediately add in my 1/2 cup of shallots. Give those a nice stir and saute these for 5 minutes until they're translucent. I wish you could smell this right now. It's just like butter, sage, shallots. It's heavenly. It's gonna be lovely. Meanwhile, I have my butternut squash I'm gonna add in, along with my cup of broth. I'm just gonna spread this out. So I've got my butternut squash and my broth in this mixture of butter and shallots, and I'm going to turn up the heat and bring it to a boil. And once it's come to a boil, I'm then going to bring the heat back down to a simmer and let the flavors mingle for about 10 minutes. Water's boiling, ready for our gnocchi. I'm going to make sure they're all together and toss them in at once, gently. They're very fragile little dumplings. And I'm going to give the pan a little stir so that they have a tendency to stick to the bottom if you don't give them a little nudge right away. So I'm going to keep my eye on these gnocchi as they only take about 2 or 3 minutes before they start rising up to the top, and that lets you know that they're done. Okay, so these gnocchi have risen, and I'm just going to scoop them out with this little sieve. Be gentle with them because they're very tender. Shake off the excess water. And I'm going to toss them with a very tiny amount of olive oil just to keep them from sticking together while my sauce is happening. So I've just done a little drizzle of olive oil. I'm going to shake it about. So my butternut squash sauce, I brought this to a boil, and then I turned the heat down, and I've let it simmer for 5 minutes so far. And I'm going to let it go for another 5 to seal the deal with the flavors. And then when that's done, we're going to blend it up with our immersion blender. I'm going to add in now my heavy cream and my Parmesan. I'm just going to use this as a stirring wand. And taste it. Perfect.